About derivatives with a table graphically and then writing tangent lines. So let's just review the product rule. So if you have to take the derivative of the product of two functions, f times g, that's equal to, you should know this already, f prime times g plus f times g prime. So that should be something you already know. As far as the quotient rule, when you're asked to do the derivative of the division of two functions, f of x divided by g of x, that is the bottom function times the derivative of the top minus the top function times the derivative of the bottom all over the bottom function squared. So don't forget the squared on the bottom, don't forget the subtraction, don't forget the order. The chain rule. When you're asked to do the chain rule, that's when you have a function that is inside of another function. That derivative is you take the derivative of the outside, leave the inside function alone, then you multiply by the derivative of the inside function. Tangent lines. You need a point, some point, comma a, comma f of a. Those are numbers, not variables. You need a slope, comes from the derivative at the value a. That's also a number. All of these are numbers, not variables. So don't make the mistake of putting a variable into an equation that where it's not supposed to be. The tangent line then is going to be y equals f prime of a times x minus a plus f of a. So 3 examples. One using the product rule, one using the quotient rule, one using the chain rule. So this one is the product rule. Using this chart, find h prime of 4 in the simplest form. So h prime of x is equal to f prime of x times g of x plus f of x times g prime of x. If we plug in a 4 into this, h prime of 4 is just f prime of 4 times g of 4 plus f of 4 times g prime of 4. So all we're doing is we're just plugging values into this. We're just plugging f prime of 4 is -8. G of 4 is 9. F of 4 is -11. And g prime of 4 is 2. And I'll let you finish the arithmetic with that. Okay, moving on. The quotient rule. This one comes with a couple of graphs. So the first thing I want to do is I want to do the quotient rule over here on h of x. So if I'm going to do the quotient rule on here, h prime of x is equal to the bottom function times the derivative of the top function minus the top function times the derivative of the bottom function all over the bottom function squared. So when we're asked to find h prime of 4, we would put a 4 in for everything that we see in that. But let's talk about this. Remember that f of 4 is just the value of the graph. F, so that's just f of 4. F prime of 4 is the slope when x equals 4. Similarly, down here, g of 4 is the value when x equals 4, and g prime of 4 is the slope when x equals 4. So, if we look at this first one, 4 is right here. So f of 4 is equal to negative 3. F prime of 4 is the slope of that line. The slope of that line is 1. Up 1 over 1. If we go down to the g graph, 4 is right here. G of 4 is equal to negative 3. G prime of 4 in this one also happens to be 1. So, when you're going through this, and you're calculating the derivative, what you would have, if I calculate this derivative, g of 4 is negative 3, f prime of 4 is 1 minus f of 4 is negative 3, g prime of 4 is 1, all over g of 4, which is negative 3 squared. And then you can do the arithmetic that involves getting that one done too. Okay? I think this one ends up being, just for the sake of doing this one, because it was kind of weird, this is negative 3 plus 3 divided by 9, which is equal to 0 divided by 9, which is equal to 0 for that one. Hopefully I did that right. Okay, now the last one I want to do is something that looks like this. Write the equation of the tangent line. Okay, of g, the tangent line of g. So in order to write the equation of the tangent line of g at x equals 1, negative 1, we need the point negative 1 comma g of negative 1. This is one thing we need. We also need g prime of negative 1. So let's look at g of negative 1 first. So if we need to figure out what g of negative 1 is, we do 2 times f of negative 1 cubed. Okay, so f of negative 1 is negative 1 right up here. Look at that. So we have 2 negative 1 cubed. So we got negative 2. So that's our point. Our point is negative 1 comma negative 2. So now we need our slope. But in order to get our slope, we have to calculate g prime of x. Notice that f of x is up here, or g of x is up there. We need to calculate the derivative of that. We're going to need to use the chain rule. The chain rule on that is 6 f of x squared. Drop the power down. 3 times 2 is 6. Reduce the power by 1. Now it's squared. Times f prime of x. So now I need to use the values that I have again in here. If I'm looking for g prime of negative 1, that would be 6 times f of negative 1 squared times f prime of negative 1. I have all those values in my given information. This is negative 1 squared. F prime of negative 1 is 6. So we end up with 36. That's our slope. Okay, that is our slope. So our tangent line then, write it in a different color. Tangent line is y equals 36 x minus negative 1 plus negative 2. I realize you can subtract the 2 and add the 1 in there, but I just wanted to show you where I put everything. Hopefully that makes sense. Good luck.